"You look like someone I loved once." The words left the Duke of Tarnwick before he could call them back, and the woman on the scaffold did not turn her head. She only drew her needle through the scorched border of the tapestry and answered, without hurry, "Then I am sorry for her, your grace. Likenesses are cheap. There must be 100 of me in the county." Ansel Hardcastle stood in the ruin of his long gallery with his hands clasped behind his back, and no notion at all of what possessed him to speak. 2 winters past a chimney fire had eaten the east end of Tarnwick, and with it 400 years of his mother's tapestries. The hunt, the harvest, the great green wall of ivy and birds that had hung above his childhood. He had not been able to burn what was left of them. Neither could he look at them. So he had done what dukes do when they cannot decide. He had paid. A company of Needlewomen had come up from the towns, and for 6 months they had lodged in the west wing, unpicking char and matching wool, and he had made a point of never coming to watch. Tonight he had come because the hour was late and the house was too quiet, and because a single lamp burned at the far end of the gallery where no lamp had any business burning. "You work late," he said. "The light is better when there is only one of it," she said. "In the day the windows quarrel with the lamp, and I cannot tell the old dye from the new." He crossed the boards. Above him she was a shape in grey wool, a woman of perhaps 35, though he thought hardship might have lent her a decade she had not earned. Her hair was pinned plainly and had gone silver at one temple early. When she reached up he saw her hands. The left was seamed with an old burn from wrist to knuckle, the skin shining and tight, the fingers still working, still exact. "Forgive me," he said, "what I said. It was ill-mannered." "It was only foolish," she said. "There is a difference, and the difference is in your favor." He found that he had smiled, which surprised him, and that he did not wish to go, which surprised him more. "Your name," he said. "Mrs. Vale." "Then good night, Mrs. Vale." He did not sleep. 11 years is long enough for a man to make an ordinary peace with almost anything. Ansel had made his. He had a good estate, a cold house, and a reputation in 3 counties for being the sort of duke nobody attempted to charm twice, and none of it troubled him except in the small hours, when he was sometimes visited by the memory of a rector's daughter from Hollowbeck who had told him once, standing in the rain with a basket of somebody else's washing on her hip, that he had the face of a man who had never in his life been contradicted, and that it was doing him no good whatsoever. Damaris Wren, 19 years old, with a laugh a man could hear across a churchyard. He had meant to marry her. He had said so aloud in this house, in the very room beneath this gallery, and his father had heard him out and then explained, quite calmly, what would follow. The living taken from her father, the small debts called in, the slow ruin, and none of it Ansel's doing at all, merely the natural weather that gathers when a duke's hair attaches himself where he ought not. Ansel had been 23. He had believed, God forgive him, that if he went abroad for a year and came back with the thing still true, it could be carried. He had written every week from Vienna. Nothing came back. In the 10th month a letter arrived in a hand he did not know, informing him that Miss Wren had gone north with her family, that the Hollowbeck living had passed to another man, and that she wished his lordship every happiness. He had believed it, because believing it was easier than the alternative, and because he was young and his grief flattered him. He came again the next night, and brought a second lamp. She looked at it, and then at him, with an expression he could not read. "Set it on the trestle, if you please," she said, "not the floor. The floor throws the shadow upward and makes liars of the greens." He set it on the trestle. "You know the work," he said. "I han little else for 9 years. You do it better than the others." "The others are quicker," she said. "Quick is worth more. I am kept on because I can match a dye that was mixed before my grandmother was born, and because nobody else will sit 5 hours to save a hand's breadth of somebody's ivy. Why will you?" Her needle stopped. It was a very small pause, no longer than a heartbeat, and he would think of it a great deal afterward. "Because somebody made it," she said. "That seems to me reason enough. He took to coming most evenings. He told himself it was oversight. It was not oversight." The gallery smelled of wool and lamp oil and faintly still of smoke, and in it he talked more than he had talked in a decade, and she gave him back short dry answers that had the shape of the truth, and never once asked him for anything. He learned that she had been widowed. that her husband had been an elderly bookbinder in a northern town who had married her out of kindness when she had nowhere, and who had left her his tools and no money, that the burn on her hand had come from a laundry copper in a household where she had been the lowest woman in it. She told him these things the way another person might list the counties they had passed through on a coach journey, and when he said, once, that he was sorry, she looked down at him from the scaffold with something close to impatience. "Do not be," she said. "Pity is a heavy coat, your grace. I have carried enough weight. Then I withdraw it. Thank you. It was not pity," he said. "I am not certain what it was." She resumed her stitching. "Then we shall both be spared a great deal of conversation about it." On the 11th evening he brought a chair and sat, and she came down off the scaffold to ease her back, and he saw her walk for the first time. She favoured the left leg. Not badly, only enough that a man who had spent his life watching horses would notice, and be unable to stop noticing. "An illness," she said, before he could arrange the question. "6 years ago. It nearly finished me and settled for taking the leg's opinion instead. You answer questions I have not asked. You have a loud face." He laughed. It came out of him rusty and strange and rang up into the burnt rafters, and she stood quite still in the lamplight and watched him do it, and something moved across her features and was put away again before he could catch it. That night, walking the gallery alone after she had gone up, he stopped where the great ivy tapestry hung on its frame, half restored, the new wall bright as spring against the old. He had not looked at it properly in 20 years. He looked now. Down in the corner, low, where a small person kneeling might reach, there was a mend. It was old work, honest and slightly crooked, a patch of ivy leaves rebuilt by somebody who had not been trained and had cared very much. And in among the leaves, where no bird belonged, somebody had stitched a wren. Ansel stood with the lamp shaking very slightly in his hand. He remembered the summer the rector's daughter had been brought up to Tarnwick with her father, and had got herself lost, and had been found at the end of the long gallery on her knees with her mother's workbag open beside her, mending a hole a candle had made. He remembered his mother, who had been dying and knew it, laughing until she had to sit down. He remembered the girl explaining, with enormous seriousness, that she had signed it, because everything made should be signed, and that a wren was the smallest bird, and therefore the least presumptuous signature available. He raised the lamp and moved along the frame into the new work, the bright work, the wool that had been laid in these 6 months by a woman with a burned left hand. 3 feet up, among leaves that had been dead a year ago and were green again, there was a second wren. The gallery was very cold. He stood in it a long time. She was not on the scaffold the next evening. She was sitting on the trestle bench with her workbag on her knees in her cloak, as though she had been waiting a while and had decided how to sit. "You found it," she said. "Damaris." "Yes." He had rehearsed nothing, and so nothing came. He crossed the boards and stopped a proper distance from her, because he did not trust himself nearer. "I did not know you." "No," she said. "You did not. That is the whole account of me. I stood underneath you for 11 evenings and I did not know you, Ansel." It was the first time she had used his name, and it went through him like a hand closing. "You looked at me the first night and told me I had the face of a woman you loved once. You knew me perfectly well. You simply could not make it fit what stood in front of you, and I did not help you, and that was my doing and not yours. Why did you not help me?" She opened the work bag, took out a small flat packet wrapped in oiled cloth, and set it on the bench between them. "Because of these." He unwrapped it. Letters, his own hand, his own seal, the paper foxed and soft with handling. Every one opened, every one read to pieces. "They came," he said. "They came for 8 months. Then my father was told very courteously, by a man from your family's attorney, that his living depended upon my never answering one. My father was 61 and had a wife and 2 younger daughters and no money of his own." She smoothed the oiled cloth flat with her scarred hand. "He begged me. I have never seen a man beg before or since, so I did not answer. The living was taken anyway 2 years later for a different reason, and by then you had been told I was gone north wishing you every happiness. I believed it. I know. I should not have believed it." "No," she agreed. "But you were 23, and you had been raised to believe that when a thing became difficult, someone would carry it away for you. Somebody did." She looked up. I have had 11 years to be angry, Your Grace, and I finished being angry 6 years ago in a room I did not expect to leave alive. What was left afterward was smaller, and it has kept me warm ever since, and I would rather not put it on the table for inspection. Then why did you come to Tarnwick? For the wages. 12 shillings a week and my keep. There is no romance in it. Damaris. She was quiet, then low. And because I want to see the ivy once more before somebody sold it or burned it, I was told the East End had gone. I did not know how much. Her chin came up. It was a foolish reason, and I paid a fortnight's earnings for the coach. He sat down on the bench. It was not a thing dukes did, and neither of them appeared to notice. I have looked for you, he said. Not well. Not as a man looks for a thing he means to find, because I was taught that wanting anything very much was a species of bad breeding. But there were 9 years when I did not enter a town without reading the parish list. You would not have found me. I was Vale by then. It was my mother's name. Her voice went very quiet, which was worse than breaking. You brought me a second lamp, and you never once asked me to be what I was, and you laughed like a man who had forgotten how. I have thought every night that I ought to tell you, and every night I have gone up those stairs instead, because the moment I told you, you were going to look at my hand. He did not look at her hand. He held out his own, palm up, and waited. It took her a long moment. Then she put the burned hand into it, and he closed his fingers over the tight shining seam of it, and bent his head, and said nothing at all for a while. You are not the girl in the rain, he said at last. No, I do not want the girl in the rain. I have had 11 years of her, and she is excellent company, and she never once contradicted me, because a memory cannot. He lifted his head. I have been contradicted 11 evenings running by a woman on a scaffold, and it has done me more good than the whole of the last decade. That is not a comparison, Damaris. That is a preference. She was crying without sound and without any apparent permission, and she looked furious about it. I have nothing. A work-bag, a dead man's tools, and a name that is not mine. You have signed my house twice, said the Duke of Tarnwick. 22 years apart. I should think that constitutes a claim in law. The laugh that broke out of her was the same laugh. 11 years, a burn, a fever, a bookbinder's grave, and it was the same laugh, and it went across the ruined gallery and up into the rafters, and Ansel Hardcastle discovered that a man can be brought to his knees by a sound. He did not kiss her that night. He walked her to the foot of the west stairs, let her hand go, and stood in the gallery until the lamps burned out. He married her in the Tarnwick chapel in the last week of March, before 11 people, 3 of them Needlewoman. The county had opinions. He received them with the grave, unhurried courtesy that had made men afraid of him for years, and did not trouble to answer any of them, and after a season the county discovered that the Duchess of Tarnwick could match a Flemish dye by candlelight and had opinions of her own, and decided had approved all along. The gallery took another 3 years. She would not let it be hurried, and he would not have hurried it for the world. On the evening they hung the ivy back in its place, the whole green wall of it, the hunt and the harvest and the 400 years. He took a lamp along the bottom until he found the crooked little mend in the corner where a small person kneeling could reach. 2, he said. There should be a third. There is, said his wife. He found it high up in the new work near the frame, where nobody standing on the floor would ever see it. 3 wrens on a branch of ivy, one of them silver at the temple, the whole of it stitched with a left hand that had learned to be exact. He stood beneath it until the oil was gone, and his wife came and stood beside him in the dark, and he did not speak, because there was nothing left in him that needed saying. He had been given back the smallest bird. He kept it all his days as the least presumptuous and most valuable thing he owned.